Oh, hi there, Women's Growth Group leaders. Sorry I can't be there at the training meeting today. I'm off with the M Pastors Retreat, and then Jen and I are getting away with a few old college friends for later in the week. So Jenny asked if I could speak to you via a short video about the studies coming up, which are on Romans 12, and the study booklet is called In View of God's Mercy. And so, yeah, I'd love to just spend a few minutes telling you about these studies in the hope that that will mean a better experience for you leading your group. So it's always exciting to be studying Romans in term 2. Over the last few years we've just taken our time very slowly through Romans with the goal that as a whole church we're growing together, wrestling with God's character, His plan, our salvation, and now as we come to Romans 12, how we should live. So Romans 12 kind of draws on all of that previous stuff from Romans 1 to 11 and pushes us on how we should live. The big idea of these studies is that in view of God's mercy, in view of everything He's done for us, His salvation, justification, all that sort of blessings through Christ, we should live lives that are wholeheartedly devoted to God. We should live lives that are serving Him in every way. Our bodies, our lives are to be living sacrifices for God. So that is the big idea of these studies. 8 weeks. The goal is by the end of it, people have been challenged and really are giving their whole lives to God. So let me tell you about the way they work. So 8 studies. The first, going through each verse quite slowly. So Romans 12, if you read it, it's really quite packed with a lot of very helpful applications. Didn't want to rush it, so we're going through each verse quite slowly. Study 1, for example, is just verse 1, Romans 12, verse 1. In view of God's mercies, present your bodies as a living sacrifice to God, holy and pleasing to Him. That's your spiritual act of worship. So one verse. We want people to really think about that and apply it. So that will be the general format over 8 weeks, just 1, 2 or 3 verses at a time. So the emphasis is not so much on comprehension, more on application this year. Now, one thing that is important and is kind of distinctive of these studies is the way that each study reviews one of the key blessings that God has shown us, one of the mercies, if you like, in view of God's mercies. Each study will go back and look at one of those and reflect on them and think about how does this particular mercy or kindness of God motivate us to live godly and obedient lives. I think this is important to do because otherwise the studies could come across as legalistic or moralistic, just a list of things that we should do. But by reviewing every week something about what God has done for us, we'll be continually reminded that we're living in grace and God has shown us grace, and that grace is what motivates us to obey whatever is in those verses. So for study 1, you'll look at salvation. In study 2, you'll do a recap on justification. Study 3, a recap on reconciliation, and so on and so forth. You can have a look in there. So that does require a little bit of prior knowledge or pre-reading. One of those reviews is on the doctrine of predestination or election. One of them is on God's glory. So there are a few challenging things there. But I would suggest you look at them with a reasonable amount of time, like 10 minutes or so, but then move on to the study. And if people are just rocked or wrestle or can't figure out that sort of recap, then encourage them to read those passages for themselves, think about it, and talk with you a bit more next week. So that is a key format, a key idea of one of these studies is that reviewing a doctrine each week. So that's sort of how they work. A big idea that in view of God's mercy, we give our lives as a living sacrifice. The style, only a few verses, weighted towards application, and with that review of a key mercy or grace of God in each study. As to actual questions, I've tried to keep that fairly brief, a few observation questions, a few interpretation questions, summary questions, a launching question most weeks, a recap question, that sort of thing. I've tried to cater for different learning styles. There's a little bit of drawing, a little bit of acting out, role playing, logical type stuff. So hopefully across the 8 weeks, the different learning styles in your group will be accommodated for. One thing I would encourage you to have a look at is asking very good application questions and trying to ask questions that might be specific for your group. There are a few questions there that I've written with the help of Kelly with women in mind or mothers in mind, but these studies are going to go a lot better if you can think about how what the Bible is teaching speaks particularly to the people in your group. And you personally, I suppose. For me, that's always the most fruitful way to think about application, is to apply it to myself. So yeah, do that with each passage and think about how it might work for the women in your group, and ask the extra question or the tangent or whatever it might be to push people along in really growing in maturity as they look at Romans 12 together. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say on that one. Hope you enjoy preparing the studies and leading the studies and working with your co-leader. Please do give me a text or an email or whatever if you'd like any help with leading the studies. There's also in the attachments I would have sent you leaders' notes, about as extensive as I can manage for these studies, which should be a help for you. So there you go, I'll be praying for you. Have a good meeting, and I will see you around the church. Okay, thanks, bye.